October is a time of change in my garden. The vivid tones of summer change to the bright foliage tints of autumn. It's a time for planting for the year ahead and also for preparing for winter. Few trees can match the Japanese maple when it comes to versatility and beauty. At this time of year in particular, their autumn colour is stupendous. The variety you get in terms of foliage, colour and shape means that everybody wants to collect them, everybody including me. I planted them in the situation I knew they would like. It's a raised bed with good, well-drained soil, and it gets shade from the scorching sun of midday and afternoon as the sun goes round from these birch trees. It's also sheltered by the yew hedge behind, which throws off the colour of the Japanese maples as a brilliant foil. If I was allowed just one Japanese maple, it would definitely be this one, Seryu. I grew it in a pot for about 10 years, then we moved house. So 23 years ago I planted it out and it's turned into this glorious arching tree. Delicate foliage, glorious orange autumn colour and just a habit which is full of grace. I love Katsura too, which is the first one to come into leaf. It changes gradually through greens and going back to the pinkish tinges of autumn. I have never met anybody who doesn't like Japanese maples, varieties in the main of Acer palmatum, because they're so beautiful, they're so obliging, and they will fit in the smallest of gardens because they don't grow terribly large. But out of all of them, I think this is perhaps the most popular. This is Acer palmatum sangokaku. It used to be called Senkaki, but Sangokaku is the name now. At this time of year, you can see the foliage beginning to burnish. The colder weather starts those sugars in the leaf forming and turning them this lovely reddish colour. And when you look at the stems, they're always described as coral red. When the leaves have fallen, as they do on all Japanese maples, the stems are revealed and they give you colour right the way through the winter. In summer, the leaves on Sangokaku are green, but you can see them now in their autumn finery. All Japanese maples change their leaf colour in autumn. They do it at different speeds and they grow different colours. Some grow scarlet, some orange, some crimson, some yellow. This one here, Arctic Jade, changes more slowly than Sangokaku there. And this one starts to colour from the outside of the leaves inwards. And its stems here are green as opposed to that coral red colour on Sangokaku. They vary in height. As you can see, these two are relatively tall growing, but none of them will eat you out of house and home. Few of them grow much taller than 10 feet and they've got a light and feathery canopy. Others stay lower, like Moonrise here. Moonrise has these leaves which are bright fresh green but with pinkish tinged leaf tips. It's also remarkably resistant to scorch. Now the thing about all Japanese maples is they hate drying winds and scorching sunshine. Dappled shade is what they like. Provided Japanese maples are sheltered from scorching sunlight and drying winds, they have few problems, but you will occasionally notice branches dying back. We don't always know why, but keep your eye open, and when you see little stems like this which have died, snip them off as soon as you see them to avoid that dieback going further down the stem, and then you will usually arrest it. When it comes to dark foliage, few are a deeper shade than this one. This is blood good. This is a moderate-sized Japanese maple, really dark leaves. They colour up before they fall, but again, it's a good one to add contrast with lighter green ones around it. The Japanese maples with very, very finely cut leaves are varieties of Acer palmatum dissectum. Dissectum meaning the leaves are dissected, divided up even more. And then we get to the purple varieties of dissectum. They tend to form a lower mound of growth rather than being tall and upright, and that makes them very suitable for small gardens, but also for planting in pots and tubs. And that's exactly what I'm going to do with this one. Decent sized pot. Good drainage hole in the bottom, bit of crock, make sure the drainage hole doesn't get blocked. I'm using peat-free ericaceous compost. Ericaceous means it doesn't have lime in it. Japanese maples prefer acid soil, and ericaceous compost is acid. If it's too chalky, they can get a little bit anemic and go a bit pale. But this one will be very happy in ericaceous. It's not essential, but for me, I like to give every plant a good start in life, and if you like that compost, you shall have it. Right, tap it out of its pot, and oh, now look at that. We've got a really root-bound plant here. We use a little hand fork and just tease them out. It encourages them to leave that central root ball and spread out into the compost where there's much more nutrition. It don't have to be too brutal, but this will just say to them, there's a lot more compost out there than the one you've been used to. The big wide world. Here we are. I love doing this. It means you get sort of up close and personal with your plant. That's about all it needs, really. It's just, you know, encourage it to travel a bit. I'm going to drop it down into there. Now that is too high. I want to leave sufficient gap between the rim of the pot and the surface of the compost so that I can fill it up with water and it will soak down. So I'm going to take a bit of that. In fact, what I can do is just pull it to the sides of the pot so that it will sit deeper inside it. There we are. Now that's pretty perfect. I've also got about 3 inches, 8 centimetres around the side, which I can fill with new compost and encourage those roots to come outwards. You don't have to ram it. Can you see me? I'm in here. You don't have to ram it down. I can feel the root ball under there. It's just about an inch below the surface. When I put water on it in a minute, it'll soak straight down. But later on, when roots have really begun to occupy that compost, the water will sink more slowly. And that means if you can fill it up to the rim and then leave it, remember always an inch of water travels 9 inches downwards. And isn't that handsome now? There it sits. How long can it live in a pot like this? It'll certainly do 4 or 5 years quite happily before you need to give it some extra nutrition. And that can mean either taking it out, scraping away some of the root ball and repotting it in the same pot but with fresh compost, or moving it up a size. But in a pot this big, this maple is going to be happy in here for quite a few years. I know I watered it before I planted it, that's important, but so too is watering it immediately afterwards. And then just keep your eye on the surface of the compost. When it starts to look a little bit dry, give it a really good soak. Then don't go back again till it looks dry again. Then come the spring and the summer, of course they're more thirsty. They'll need a little more. As summer turns to autumn, it's a great time to plant veg, which will mature next spring. I'm going to show you what to plant and how to plant it. My kitchen garden at this time of year isn't much to look at, I admit, because most things have been harvested. But there's all this bare soil which it would be a shame not to use. The problem with beds outside, planting stuff in autumn to get it through the winter, is even when they're raised up like this, if it's rainy and horrible, stuff doesn't grow terribly well, but I think I've got a solution. I should get you to admire the crops I did grow this summer though, really. These onions, grown from sets, planted in April, and harvested end of August, beginning of September, when the tops had fallen over and they'd begun to dry out. Then I dried them out even more in the potting shed, and then they were strung up into these plats. This is the traditional way of storing your onions during the winter. I grew 50 last year for Mrs. T, and she said that's far too many, so she's only got 30 this year. But then, you know, one a fortnight, that'll do, won't it, really? You can grow onions from seed. I never do. I always grow them from sets. Tiny little bulbs that are planted out in March, April, that fatten up right the way through the summer. Then you harvest them and dry them and store them. But you can get onion sets that you plant now in autumn. They don't grow much during the winter, but they romp away come spring, and they will ripen much earlier. These I was harvesting in August, September. These will be harvested in June. That's pretty good. You're stealing a couple of months. However, planted in an outdoor bed, they'll rot away. So my quick tip to grow overwintering onion sets is like this. You may remember this raised bed. It's become a great friend because I've been successionally sowing salad crops in here right the way through the summer. But this is the perfect place to grow your overwintering onions. I've got the red ones, red winter, the yellow ones, Sensu yellow, and I'm just going to do a few rows of each in here because the fact it's raised up means it drains rapidly and give them that much more chance of getting through the winter. So break the pack open. It says in this here 50 sets. I shall not be getting 50 sets in here. However, I'll get enough to see us through that early part of summer. I'll just space them out to show you roughly how much room they're going to need. Remember, these onions are not going to go quite as big as the ones that I grew during the summer. Probably sneak another 2 in there, just budge them up a bit, Alan. They're not going to grow that fat. So I've got 18 onions in there. In the old days, they used to just leave the tops showing. If you leave the tops showing, blackbirds come and pull them out, and it's very irritating. So I like to get them in so they just disappear, only just, mind you. Don't bury them too deeply, but it just keeps the tops out of the way of the blackbirds. In they go. I left in the compost that the salads have been growing in, but then added some more. Just ordinary good, honest to goodness, peat-free, multi-purpose compost. And that will do them nicely. And I'll now get the red ones in alongside. I always chuck the soft ones away, it's going to rot. These are going to give you that earlier crop. And it's fun to be growing them. There'll be people at home saying he's planting them far too close together. No, not this time of year. Somebody said to me, how many onions do you get out of one of these? Well, one. Now, if the winter is really cold and really wet, even this raised bed will struggle to nurture these onions up. So there is a little insurance policy you can take. Get a seed tray and put a few in here. And you can leave these outside in a sheltered spot, but when it gets really rough, really cold, really wet, you can just bring them into a shed or garage, and that'll give them that little bit of protection. But now at the end here, where I left a bit of room, I've got space to grow some garlic. The thing they always tell you about garlic is you plant it on the shortest day and you harvest it on the longest day. Well, I'm never around doing things like this on the 21st of December because it'd be the end of a marriage, wouldn't it really, you know? So sometime during the autumn and early winter, you can plant garlic. Not like that, but broken up into individual cloves. Just as you use a clove for cooking garlic, you use a clove for planting. Plant them in the same way as the onions, just tucking them in. And each of those cloves is going to grow into a garlic bulb. So you don't need many unless you use a garlic bulb for every single meal in your household. There we are. This is a variety called Germidor. I always like to water things in, just to settle them really, but I doubt I shall have to water them much from now on, and that the autumn rains are going to keep them nice and damp, but that's just a good soaking to start them off. Once they start to grow in spring, if you do get cold snaps, it's a good idea just to have handy some fleece, just on those nights where you think, oh, they could do with a little bit of protection. You need to weight it down just to stop it from blowing off, and I found these little flower pots, bit of weight, that sorts it out. When the weather turns milder again, you can whip it off and let the rain get in more, and then have a really good circulation of air. I have high hopes now of my little raised bed producing some onions come next June, red and yellow, a bit of garlic too for midsummer. Worth a gamble, I'd have thought, wouldn't you? Today I'm going to show you how to choose the right hedge for your garden, whether you want privacy or to encourage wildlife or just a pretty boundary. So here they are, hedging plants for every situation. And of course the main one, the main reason why we have a hedge is for a bit of privacy. When it comes to privacy all year round, what you need is an evergreen hedge. Check the potential height of any hedging plant before you buy. You want to make sure that you don't offend your neighbours by letting it get overgrown, but always remember to clip the top and the sides so you keep it within bounds. Also, that helps to thicken it up. Euonymus is a great candidate for privacy. This is a variegated one called Bravo. Its bright yellow edges, the colour of butter really do sing out in winter. If I could choose just one evergreen hedging plant, with broad leaves, it will be this. This is the Portugal laurel. It's a lovely thing because its leaf stalks are crimson and the stems are too, particularly on the side that faces the sun. If I turn it slightly, you'll see they're paler where the sun doesn't get to it. But you get this lovely two-tone effect with crimson leaf stalks and rich, dark green, glossy leaves. It will grow reasonably fast. It can put on up to a foot a year, but it will take clipping really well. And I think that makes a cracking hedge. A lot of people use laurel, Prunus lauroceraceus, large, big, beefy plant, large, bright green, glossy leaves. It's good if you remember to keep pruning it and keep it in check. This one is perhaps a little bit more interesting. This is a variety called Castlewellan, and the leaves here are delicately marbled with creamy white. They're narrower too, so it's not as big and beefy as ordinary laurel. But like laurel, it stays evergreen right the way through the year, and its leaves reflect the light beautifully. These leaves on this plant don't reflect the light, but if you look at the undersides, they are a sort of creamy bronze colour. This is Elaeagnus ebingii, a very fast grower. This can put on 18 inches, 45 centimetres a year with ease. You may have to clip it twice a year, it's so vigorous. But it's very, very good for thickening up quickly and giving you a pretty impenetrable hedge. Noise pollution is an ever-present factor in our daily lives, and it's a real pain, but a hedge will help to soften that, again particularly if it's evergreen, so the foliage is carried right the way through the winter. And one of the best is yew. It's a cracking plant, yew. People used to say it's slow growing. Nonsense. It'll put on a good 6 to 9 inches a year. That's 15 to 25 centimetres. It takes clipping really well. It's a superb plant. The only thing that yew doesn't like is soggy soil. It can't cope with poor drainage. It's good on chalk, in all manner of other soils. So for me, a yew hedge is one of my absolute favourite preferences. We've all heard the horror stories about leyland cypress hedges, which actually are only a problem if they're not regularly clipped. But a safer bet is this. This is Thuya occidentalis. Its foliage is a little bit coarser than leyland, but the glorious thing about it, apart from being shiny, is that it's fragrant. Crush that and you get a fruity flavour. If you're old enough to remember boiled sweets called spangles, they smell just like spangles. Thuya is a really good evergreen hedge, and it will take relatively hard clipping, harder certainly than leyland cypress. If you're by the sea, a lot of hedges don't like salt-laden winds. This one can cope beautifully. This is Griselinia. Its second name is Littoralis, and littoral means growing on the shores, on the seashore. So Griselinia is a cracking evergreen, bright green leaf plant. I have it outside my garden on the Isle of Wight. It takes quite hard clipping once a year and forms a really dense boundary that cuts down sound and also the prying eyes. When it comes to both privacy and sound suppression, the thicker your hedge is, the better. So if you really want a dense hedge, rather than planting a single row, do a staggered row or a double row with singles in the gaps, rather like the 5 on a dice. And that way you'll end up with a hedge which is really dense, really sound suppressing and really private. You can sunbathe in your bikini then. Hedges can also bring you flowers and fragrance. The bay tree. Lovely, fruity fragrance from those leaves. It's very, very good as a plant, a good evergreen. Mind you, if you're in a drafty, cold place, the leaves can get burned in winter. So try and find them a sheltered spot or in the milder southern counties where they'll be absolutely fine. Viburnum tinus is this beauty here, which has got these flat heads of white flowers opening from pink buds. In winter, that's the joy of it. It flowers at a time when not much else is doing its best in the shrub department. And you can see as the flowers fade, you get these tiny little red fruit. It'll make a hedge easily 6 feet high if you let it grow, and then clip it. Clip it when the flowers fade and the spring growth is just coming. And the Mexican orange blossom, Choisya. This is the yellow-leaved form, acid yellow, called Sundance. Crush the leaves and they're aromatic, but in May it's covered in white fragrant flowers and you'll get a second burst in September. I use this on either side of my drive in its plain green form, and I clip it into a kind of rolling sea after it's finished flowering, beginning of June. Then it thickens up and it's green again right the way through the winter. And so we come to what a friend of mine calls posh people's hedges. People with gardens large enough to have internal hedges as well. Well, we can all do a bit of that, even in a tiny garden, by dividing up areas with long, low boundaries. Rosemary is a good candidate for a low hedge. Keep it clipped and you can grow it up to knee or waist height. There are tall varieties like Miss Jessop's upright. If you want to plant them closer and let them come up, I'd use the ordinary one and clip it into a relatively informal shape for a hedge. The most widely grown dwarf hedge until recent years was box, Boxus sempervirens. But over the past few years it falls prey to box blight, which is a fungus and turns it brown, and box moth. You can see the little caterpillars eating the leaves. But if you want to grow box, then particularly with the moth, you need to find some way of controlling it. An organic control like this one you can spray on at regular intervals. The packet gives you all the information, and this particular nematode will feed on the box moth and reduce its damage. Otherwise, look for something different. Euonymus is good. If you don't like variegation, go for green spire. It's glossy, it's green. For me, it's not quite as good looking as box, but it doesn't get box moth. An alternative, again, with a leaf which is nearer to box than the euonymus, is this, Ilex crenata, a dwarf small-leaved holly. This is a variety called Jenny. Give it good soil and an open, sunny situation, and that way you've got an alternative to box. What you will have with any of these plants is a hedge which offers you interest all the year round, is a home to wildlife, gives you privacy, reduces noise. I mean, what's not to like? So I know it's tempting, particularly when you get a new garden, just to whack up a fence. But if you do, plant a hedge in front of it. It'll be much easier on your eye. This is my compost. I know it's massive. I've got a big garden, so I've got a big and sturdy heap. It's made from concrete posts with these planks that are dropped in, and as the compost heap grows, so the planks go in to give it really firm sides. You can see it well mixed. It's all steaming up here, and if you put your hand inside it, it's burning my fingertips. I once met a couple and he was so keen on his compost that he made meals in it. He had a pressure cooker. He put a joint of lamb in it, I think it was, lamb or beef, and he sealed the top and he buried it inside his compost heap. He took it out and the joint was cooked. But down about here, halfway down, it will already be looking like this. And this is free. It's enriching your soil at no cost other than a degree of effort. This is about a year old. But you've got a small garden, you can't fit this in, but you can fit this one in. A good place to start if your garden's an average size is with a simple wooden 1 metre by 1 metre slot down compost bin. You can buy them in kits, and if you're handy with a drill, They're easy to put together. This one will take up to 650 litres of waste, and the boards slot in and out, making accessing the compost easier. So there you have it, the perfect solution for a medium-sized garden. If you've got a tiny garden with no room for this, then you can get those narrow bins that you can fit in. Always worth it. It rots down better in a container. The thing then is to decide what to put in it and what to leave out. You'll hear all sorts of conflicting advice about your compost heap. What should go in, how much brown, how much green. Just don't worry about that. It's very straightforward. You're going to put into your heap things which will rot. One of the first places to start is the obvious one, the waste that comes from the garden. Things like herbaceous perennials that you've cut down at the end of the summer. This is a hardy geranium in here. It's green, it's sappy, it rots quite easily. Some of these stems are a bit thicker. That's quite good, keeps a bit of air in the heap. So any border perennial that you're chopping down, put that into your heap. Leaves. Now a lot of people rot down leaves separately to make leaf mould. Good idea. You can stick them in a black bin liner. They'll take a couple of years before they get brown and crumbly. Soft leaves, like this from a flowering cherry, they can be mixed in with everything else and they can go in the heap, because that way they're adding a bit of lignin, a bit of the woodiness from the stalks of the leaves. They're variety, and that's important in the heap. It's not a concentration of any one thing, and that particularly applies to grass clippings. Put a mound of grass clippings up and it will turn on its own into greeny brown slime. Mix it with everything else and it's great at heating the heap up. Wood, I wouldn't put wood in on its own because it'll be ages and ages and ages before it rots down. But if you've got a shredder or a chipper and you can feed bits of wood through that, then the wood chippings that go in, they will keep it open. They'll stop it getting too brown and gungy like the grass clippings do, and thicker stems from your perennials will do the same thing. Is there anything in the garden that you shouldn't put on it? Well, for a start, don't put thick-rooted weeds like ground elder, convolvulus and dandelions into your heap. It may not heat up enough to kill them, and you just don't want to be spreading weed growth throughout your garden. Any plant material that's diseased, black spot on roses, black rot on hellebores, don't add those to the heap, because particularly with fungus diseases, they may well keep going and carry over to future years. That's the garden. What about stuff you can use from the house? So from your home office, if you've got a shredder that shreds all those things you don't want anybody else to see, that can go in the compost heap. It will rot down, mixed with everything else. So too will cardboard. You know how a cardboard box goes soggy soon as the rain hits it. Keep your compost heap damp, and this, although it's quite firm when you put it in, will get very soggy, and mixed with everything else, that will rot down too. From the kitchen, eggshells, crushed. Don't put them in whole like that, just crunch them all up, and they're valuable roughage. They've got lots of calcium in them. You're adding nutrients to your heap, as you are with coffee grounds, spent ones. These have lots of nitrogen in them. Then there's kitchen waste proper from vegetables. Potato peelings, don't waste them, they'll rot down. Banana skins, as you know from tennis players, they contain lots of phosphates. They give energy. They give energy to your heap too. They can go in, they take a while to rot down and go brown and horrible. Carrot peelings, perfect, just the job. Lettuces, broccoli that you haven't eaten, that's gone off past its sell-by date and wilted. Anything like that that's green is going to add to the nutrition in your heap once it's started to rot. When it comes to household waste that you shouldn't put in, don't put anything in that's been cooked. Bread, no. Meat, no. Why? Because they all attract vermin. In the same way as you don't find eating potato peelings very attractive, but you do like a good roast spud, so does your average rat. So don't put in anything cooked. That's the rule of thumb. So I've put a good layer of mixed garden waste on the bottom. I don't really want to start with stuff from the kitchen. That'd be better off higher up, just because this gives me a sort of well-drained bottom layer to start with. More of it going in, those stems which are slightly thicker, the lawn mowings and the leaves mixed together. What's key at this stage, as it goes in, is to keep mixing it up. Why? Because the mixture makes it rot down faster. Right, on to the rest of it. Shredded paper, that can go in. Next bit, cardboard. I feel a bit like a cook. Teaspoon of this, a few banana peelings. Not very appetising, is it? But it is for your compost heap. And then give it a stir. Now, a lot of people turn their compost heap. If you mix it all together at the start, so it's really all jumbled up, I see no point in bothering turning it. If life's too short to stuff a mushroom, it's too short to turn a compost heap. Some of these things, as they rot, heat up faster than others, and they'll transfer that heat to the ones that are a bit more reluctant and a bit slower. So the mixture is quite key in getting it all heated to a high temperature, which kills off pests. It kills off quite a few diseases, except those fungal spores that I've told you not to put in, and it really gets things moving. The next thing to do, having mixed it, is to trample it, firm it. If there's too much air in there, the compost heap will dry out, and when it dries out, rotting stops. For those of you who have worked in the vineyard, this is pretty much like treading grapes. Although the outcome isn't quite so tasty, it's every bit as useful in the garden. What you must also do is to keep it moist. In summer, I turn the hose pipe on my heap every week or so if it starts looking dry, because if it dries out, the rotting stops. And to keep that moisture in, easiest thing to do is to get a bit of old curtain or carpet or whatever. Do check that it's finished within the house before you take it out into the garden to use on your heap. But if you just arrange this over the top like a bit of a shroud, it just, particularly in summer, it'll stop the heap from drying out. But after a year, you can go into the bottom of the heap, which is where the best rotted stuff will be, and this is what I've produced in 12 months. Now that is cracking stuff for enriching your garden soil, and the greatest beauty is, apart from the smell, it's absolutely free. Good compost heap, good garden. If your garden is absolutely minute and you haven't got room for a compost heap in any shape or form, buy some kind of soil improver, organic enrichment in bags, and work that into your soil. Your soil is improved by bulky organic matter, and that's when plants grow best. If you're looking for gardening tips like this, why not subscribe to my channel? You'll find ways of improving your garden, whatever its size, every week.